Brooklyn Independent Television.
This show, Sector B, premiered just a little more than 4 years ago. For our very first episode, we did a story on all the exciting things that were happening at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, one of the most vibrant business and industrial sites in New York City. Well, it's time we checked in again. Here to bring us up to date is Andrew Kimball, President and CEO of the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Andrew, thank you for being here, especially so shortly after your knee surgery. We're happy to have you.
Thanks. Delighted to be back. I promise it wasn't an angry tenant. That was the old Brooklyn waterfront.
I hear you. So, Andrew, a lot of exciting things are happening at the Navy Yard. Tell us about some of these great projects.
Well, I'm delighted to be back here and delighted to report that since I was here a few years ago, we have continued to grow right through the recession. Really extraordinary numbers. We've added 2,000 jobs in the last 8 years. We expect to add another 3,000 jobs over the next 3 years, 5,500 over the next 5. And there's an extraordinary number of projects going on inside the Brooklyn Navy Yard right now.
Tell us about some of these new projects.
2 of them have been long in the making and are finally going to be going into construction over the next 12 months. First is a doubling in size of Steiner Studios. Very, very exciting. The largest sound stages today on the East Coast. They're going to be adding new stages focused on commercials, TV shows. They believe that if they had those stages up today, they'd be 100% full. And they're going to be doing an adaptive reuse of a spectacular 250,000 square foot brick building just off of Flushing and Navy with a radio tower that rises 100 feet into the sky that was the command hub for the North Atlantic Fleet. They're going to be doing an historic renovation of that building and bringing in additional ancillary entertainment and media, potentially with a graduate level film component. We're very eager to bring in more schools. Pratt is already involved with us. We've been talking to NYU Poly and Brooklyn College about an expanded role. So we're very excited about the Steiner expansion. At the other end of the yard, at the corner of Navy and Flushing, probably my most challenging project in the last 5 years has been the Admiral's Row project. This really goes back 25 years where the community has advocated for the city to acquire that site from the federal government. It's 6 acres. It's still owned by the federal government. We are now completing a Section 106 process, a very complex federal land disposition process, working with the community and our elected officials to do a very unique combination that will include historic preservation, new industrial space, and what the community has been clamoring for 20 plus years, which is a large format supermarket to really meet the public health needs in the surrounding community. There is no quality, fresh, affordable produce. It's a major public health issue. You've got night houses there, Walt Whitman, Farragut, and Ingersoll, 15,000 people, medium income of $10,000 to $15,000 a year. So serious economic issues, serious access to fresh produce issues. We are partnering with a private development partner on that site, PA Associates, and we expect when we're finished with the federal disposition process and ULURP in about a year's time that we will be in construction for a 65,000 square foot ShopRite. ShopRite is signed up, very quality supermarket, an additional 120,000 square feet of industrial space above the supermarket, something that you don't see really anywhere in terms of building out upper floor industrial space, and goes to our high level of confidence at filling up spaces we have in the yard, because basically we've been full for over 10 years, and an additional 40,000 square feet of retail space focused on community needs, and 2 spectacular historic preservation projects, Building B, which is a 3-story home, which is really the building of the old homes that have been falling down there for 30 years that's in the best shape, plus the timber shed right at the corner of Navy and Flushing, a beautiful 1-story brick building where ship sails were built going back to the 1800s. And those 2 buildings will be rehabilitated to the Department of Interior standards using historic tax credits and be brought back to life as part of a very unique and green complex. All buildings in the Brooklyn Navy Yard are built to at least LEED Silver certification or above. We'll have a very strong focus on local hiring. We've committed that the vast majority of the folks working in that supermarket will be from the surrounding communities, hopefully many of them coming right across the street from the NYCHA houses. Very strong minority and women-owned contracting requirements. We expect to have at least 30% of the dollar value of the projects going to minority and women and locally owned businesses. And that's a big part of the story of what's happening at the Yard.
So this has really been an industrial success story. What do you consider? How has this happened? What do you consider the elements to the success of the Yard?
Yeah, well, first let me say it's been happening for a long time. And while we've done some great stuff in the last 5, 10 years while I've been there, really my predecessors in the 1980s, when the last major tenant, C-Train Shipping, went out with 8,000 jobs, they figured out that what we needed to do was diversify and go small. So taking these big multi-story buildings, cutting them up into small units, figuring out a range of sectors that had long-term viability in the city. And what that's evolved into today in the last 10 years, when we've been 100% full and growing through 2 recessions, including the worst since the Great Depression, has been focusing on sectors that have long-term relevance in the city. So entertainment and media, obviously anchored by Steiner Studios, but lots of smaller tenants. Arts and culture, so almost all of the sets that go into the cultural institutions get worked on in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Hundreds of millions of dollars of artwork being treated, restored, new frames built, new boxing for it. High-end home goods, so scores of woodworkers like Scott Jordan and others, many of whom are working with recycled products. High-end design like Dugal Visual Solutions that also does on-site manufacturing. We certainly have a number of big warehouse distribution operations, some of them very closely linked to e-commerce like B&H Photo or Gilt.com, G-I-L-T, one of the fastest growing e-commerce sites in the nation. So those are the key items in terms of a leasing strategy. But what else makes us successful? The fact that we are walled off is mission critical. We are a hassle-free environment for industrial tenants. As you know, it is very difficult to mix industrial with commercial, retail, housing in the same community. People don't like the noise or the smells or the trucks. They come inside the Brooklyn Navy Yard, there's room to park, you can make noise, you don't get tickets on your truck. That's number one. Number two is there's certainty that we're going to stay in industrial park. So the businesses that we bring in the Yard are willing to invest their hard-earned money in their space. So there's over $400 million of private investment flowing into the Brooklyn Navy Yard now because there's long-term certainty about the zoning and a willingness to invest in building and growing their business.
So we should talk a little bit about history. I know there's a new visitor center, a museum coming online as well. Can you briefly tell us about that?
Yeah, this is a project we're very excited about. We've been working on it for 5 years. We have a full-time archivist at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I don't think you'd find any other industrial park in the nation with a full-time archivist. And we originally hired Daniela Romano 8 years ago to really focus on the 35,000 engineering plans that the Navy had essentially stuck in a closet and were left to rot. We scanned them, we digitized them, we used them to help us plan the redevelopment of the Yard. That has now grown into a real focus on recapturing the incredible history. There's a beautiful building right on the perimeter of the Yard, sort of in the center of the Yard, right on Flushing, called Building 92. It was designed by Thomas U. Walter, the 4th architect of the Capitol. He designed the dome of the Capitol. It's his last piece of architecture in Brooklyn. It was falling down when I got there 5 years ago. We decided, let's go out and see if we can talk to our public sector partners about turning this into a community service project. That has grown to a $25.5 million project with a modern extension on the back that will have an exhibit that'll celebrate not only the Navy Yard's rich history, the evolution of manufacturing technology, the integration of the workforce, the role of the Navy around the world, the role of the Navy Yard in serving the community's needs as it grew up over 200 years, but also, and this is what gets me even more exciting, what we are today as a modern, sustainable industrial park, that urban manufacturing is alive and well, that we have 35, for instance, green manufacturers, the green jobs of the future everybody's been talking about at the Brooklyn Navy Yard today. So we'll have profiles of tenants like Ice Stone that takes recycled glass and mixes it with cement, buffs it down for high-end countertops, a triple bottom line company, so a financial bottom line, a social bottom line, and an employment bottom line.
And a green company as well.
And a green company as well, an environmental bottom line. So we're very, very excited to showcase this.
Sounds fantastic. Well, the future sounds very bright at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Thank you, Andrew, for being here and filling us in.
Thanks.
Download this program's podcast on iTunes. Keywords Brooklyn Independent Television.